Hey, welcome back to We Be Kids. Have you ever met somebody who was unkind or treated you poorly? It really hurts us when this happens, and it can be really difficult to know how to respond or what to do. Often we want to get revenge or hurt them back, but that just puts twice as much anger and aggression in the world. In this story, a kind king teaches us how our response can make a difference and break the cycle of unkind behaviour. So this story happened in a woodland, just like this one that I'm in now. And this woodland was a kingdom that was ruled by a kind king. And in the kingdom lived a tribe of gnomes. And these gnomes were very happy living in this forest. Each day they would go out into the forest and they would find the glades and the sunny spots, and they would tickle the roots of the plants, and they would sing to the buds until the flowers bloomed. And at night time they would return back to their homes in the bases of trees, and the king would put on glorious, wonderful food for them, and he would thank them and be very gracious for all of their work. But one day, a new little gnome appeared, and he wandered into the kingdom, and at first he just joined in with the other gnomes, tickling the roots of the plants, singing to the buds of the flowers, and he was accepted. But after a while, this new gnome, he started to act a little bit differently to the others. Instead of tickling the roots of the plants, he would bash them with sticks and bash and bash and bash and try and force the plants to grow. The other gnomes would sing to the buds of the flowers, and he would tug on them and try to bring the colour out. Now the other gnomes just ignored this, and they carried on in their kind ways. But one day, this gnome, he was walking along with the other gnomes, and they came to the top of a big hill. And just out of nowhere, he raised his two hands and he pushed one gnome off the hill. And this gnome went tumbling down to the bottom. Now the other gnomes gathered round and said, "That isn't okay," and they ordered him to go and see the king. Now when the gnome arrived at the king looked at him and he said, "Gnome, show me your hands." And the gnome showed his hands to the king. And the gnome's hands were very, very, very rough. And they were a dark grey colour, almost like stone. And the king knew of this gnome's past. But he asked him, he said, "Gnome, tell me how you have arrived into our kingdom. Where did you come from?" And the gnome explained that he had been in another tribe far, far away. And he had been bashing the roots of the plants and tugging at the buds of the flowers and pushing the other gnomes around. And every time he did this, his hands became harder and harder and turned greyer and greyer. And eventually, he was ordered to leave the tribe because he wasn't welcome there. And he explained that is how he happened upon this king's tribe. And the king said, "Okay, I understand." He said, "And like the king before, I could ask you to leave and find another tribe." He said, "But I won't, because I am a king of kindness." The king explained, he said, "Go off deep into the forest, follow the sound of water, and you will arrive at a well. And by that well, you will find an old lady. Tell her of what has happened, and she will help. And when you feel the time is right, you can return to my tribe." So the gnome went off and he hurried through the forest, listening all the way for the sound of water, until he arrived in a clearing with a big waterfall and a well. And by the well was an old lady, and the gnome explained his story to the lady, how he'd been cast from tribe to tribe because of his unkind actions. And the lady pulled up a tree stump and asked him to sit on there. And she sent the bucket down the well. And when it came up, it was filled with water. And she said, "This well is the well of kindness. Give me your hands. And the gnome gave her his hands, and she began to bathe them. Very gently she would rub his hands. For day after day, she would rub them and tend to them and ask him his story and listen with an open heart and with understanding. And each day, as she applied more kindness to his hands, they became softer and softer. And the stone-like colour disappeared. And after about 2 weeks of love and kindness and caring, the gnome's hands returned to their old soft self. And with that, the lady by the well said, head back to the king and tell him what you have learned. So the gnome scurried back, and he went all the way back, and he knocked on the king's door, and he went in, and the king said, what have you learnt, gnome? And the gnome said, I have learnt that in my old tribes, people dealt with my aggression by being aggressive to me. I was never made to feel welcome. I was thrown out into the forest. And what I have learned from you, clever, kind king, is that the only way to deal with aggression is with love and with kindness. And the king nodded. He said, you have learnt the lesson well, and for that you are welcome in my kingdom. But just remember that when we meet aggression with aggression, all that happens is we get twice the amount of aggression in the world. But when we meet aggression with kindness, then kindness begins to spread. So go out there, little gnome, and find your way of spreading kindness into the world. And with that, the gnome turned around, headed out into the world to join the tribe. And the king never heard from him again. And kindness returned to the forest. Hope you enjoyed that story. It's another story about kindness. And sometimes when people are aggressive or angry to us, it's really easy just to be aggressive and angry back and to make them feel bad for the things that they've done. But people act that way normally because of things that have happened to them in the past, or maybe where people haven't been kind to them. And really, it takes a lot of strength when somebody is aggressive or unkind to you to reach back with a kind heart. So there's a challenge for us all. Next time that somebody upsets us or makes us angry, see if we can reply and respond with kindness. Hope you enjoyed this story. See you again at We Be Kids. Bye.